And now we get to our keynote. I'm going to take a little bit of your time introducing him because there's so much that Jason Jones does. He's the president and founder of Hero Inc. and Movie to Movement. Jason is a film producer, author, activist, and human rights worker. He was an executive producer on the 2006 film Bella, which won several film industry awards, most notably the People's Choice Award in 2006 at the Toronto Film Festival, International Film Festival. And Jason was the associate producer of the 2008 film The Stoning of Soraya M., which won the NAACP Image Award in 2010, as well as the Los Angeles Film Festival Audience Award in 2009. He was producer in 2012 of the TV movie Mother Marianne, Portrait of a Saint, and executive producer of the new film Voices, coming to San Antonio next Friday at the Palladium. There you go, there's a clap for you. His short films include Eyes to See in 2010, Crescendo in 2011, Sing a Little Louder in 2015. He works directly to aid the homeless, peoples facing genocide, and women with crisis pregnancies. He's the president of Movie to Movement and the Human Rights Education Organization, which is Hero in there somewhere. And he lives in Hawaii. Whoa, man, times are rough. The Race to Save Our Century is his first book and regularly contributes to The Stream. Ask him all about The Stream. The mission of Movie to Movement is to promote the incomparable dignity and beauty of the human person through the power of film. Jason, one of our local boys, Alex Trevino, have some of their wonderful DVDs for sale at the back that they've worked on and collaborated together on sale, so please make sure to clear them out of their inventory. And the vision of Movie to Movement is to produce and promote films that contribute to cultivating a culture of life, love, and beauty. Then, some of y'all remember that movie, Little Boy? Did y'all ever do that pose? If you didn't, before the night's over, you gotta do it and make things happen. I'm gonna be doing it to your donation cards. You know I'll be doing that. And you know, when he came to town, Jason made a big impact on me, and I look forward to many more opportunities to introduce him. But without any further ado, Jason Jones, let's give it up for him.
Thank you, Richard. You forgot my biggest accomplishment. I'm a father of 7. I'm not that tall. And what a privilege to be here in San Antonio. And not one bishop, but 2 proud, strong, wonderful, pro-life bishops. And Governor Abbott, is he not the best governor in America? And in 2 weeks we find out, will he become President Abbott of this new country of Texas? We'll find out. It's a little humbling to follow Bella. I thought you were running for Senate. You're such a wonderful communicator. It is a privilege and honor to be here. And many of you might not know, but San Antonio in many ways is the sister city of the Catholic community of Hawaii. There's so many intimate connections with San Antonio. We lost someone. I shouldn't have brought this up because now I'm getting emotional. But we're really closely related, and so it is a real privilege to be here in San Antonio. And I was surprised to be invited because, we get a lot of requests in Movie to Movement for Eduardo Verasti to speak. I check the voicemail every day, and it's request after request for Eduardo Verasti. But a couple of months ago, there was this strange woman who called our office, had a subtle Mexico City accent. She said, "Hello, this is Terry Herring from the Allied Women's Center in San Antonio. And we really want that hot hunk of a man of yours to come give a speech." And I was like, finally somebody wants me. So thank you, Terry. Okay, miss, that's a joke, but when you laugh that hard, it really hurts my feelings, okay? It really hurts my feelings. You know, sitting next to a Bella Mama, when we made the movie, the writer and director of Bella, Alejandro Monteverdi, said, "It is my goal to know the name of one baby whose mother chose life because she saw our film within 10 years of our theatrical release." And it's been 9 years, and we stopped counting on our 1,000th letter. Whenever I meet a Bella baby, I think of the day I first met Eduardo Verástegui. I was in Mexico City, and we had a long day of meetings. It was on a political project, and I was with Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey's wife, Marie Smith. And Congressman Chris Smith deserves a round of applause. For 30 years, he's cheered the pro-life caucus. And after an all-day of meetings, I went to my room, I ordered soup, and I was going to watch the news, and I get a phone call. It's Marie Smith. She says, "Jason, you have to come down here and meet this man, Eduardo. He's so handsome." I said, "I hate handsome men. I don't want to meet a handsome man." She said, "He's a telenovela star." I was like, "What's a telenovela?" She said, "It's a Mexican soap opera." But I don't want to meet an American soap actor. Why in the world would I want to meet a Mexican soap actor? She said, "Well, he's really pro-life. I'm coming down." So I get in the elevator, I go downstairs, I walk out in front of the hotel, and there is Marie Smith, Eduardo, and the soccer star Pele having a conversation. And what were they talking about? Jesus Christ and their commitment to the pro-life movement. And I was like, this is surreal. Amazing. And Marie excused herself, and Pele excused herself, and Eduardo and I were talking, and I remember thinking, wow, he really is a handsome man. And then Eduardo looked over my shoulder, and he had this look of horror on his face, and he said, "Run." And he takes off down the street. And I go running after him, and I'm a little worried, I don't know what's going on. He keeps looking back, each time he looks back, he's more concerned. He turns a corner, I turn the corner, he hails a cab, the cab slows down, Eduardo looks back with this look of sheer panic on his face, he dives in the cab, I turn around and I look, and I see like 40 young women running after us. I like to say us, you know. And jump in the cab, and I said to Eduardo, I said, "I'm sorry, my friend, but if you want to hang out with me, get used to it. Everything is just like this." And it has been a privilege to run with Eduardo and the Trevino family and our whole crew ever since. And a lot of people think that for me, my journey in the pro-life movement began with the movie Bella. But unfortunately for me, my journey in the pro-life movement began the way it begins for so many people, and I'm sure many in this room, many quietly and privately in this room. But for me, it began in October of 1988. I was 16 years old. It was 2 days before my 17th birthday, Saturday morning, the day after a football game. I was tired and sore, and I was just lying in bed. I heard someone coming up the steps, and I thought it was my little sister, and the door opened up, and someone sat on my bed. And I looked, and it was my high school girlfriend. She looked me in the eyes, and she said, "I'm pregnant." That's what I said. And I sat up. So Katie and I spent that day trying to figure out what we were going to do. I was a heavily recruited college football player with dreams and plans. Katie had dreams and plans, but we realized that day that things had to change, things had changed. And so we came up with a plan. I knew of a special program where you could go right into the Army at 17, because a friend of mine had just done it. And so I said to Katie, on my birthday, I'll go down to the recruiter's office and join the Army. And Katie said, okay, and I'll take vitamins and wear baggy sweaters till you get back to basic training, and then you come home and tell your parents. That was our plan. So that's what we did. I went down to the recruiter's office and I said, I want to join the Army. I didn't tell him why. I just said I'm my friend and joined, and I know there's a program. He said, this program isn't for everybody. You really have to be like an exceptional loser. I said, out of 565 kids in my senior class, I'm last in my class. And I have 80 hours of detention waiting for me at the other end of football season. And he said, I think you might qualify. He said, if your mother signs this piece of paper and your principal signs this piece of paper, we can get you into basic training in a couple of weeks. And so I took the form to my principal and I pushed it across the desk and she looked at it and she looked at me and she said, if I sign this, I'll never see you again? I said, never. Have a nice life. I took it to my mother, a single mom with 5 kids. She was a bit confused. I don't think she thinks I was serious. Maybe I was testing her. She signed it. And I went to the recruiter's office. And a couple of weeks later, the recruiter was coming to pick me up on a Saturday morning to catch a flight at O'Hare Airport to go to Fort Benning, Georgia. And I remember he called me that morning and said, okay, Private, if you've done the packing list that we gave you, you need a suitcase with socks, underwear, toothpaste, toothbrush, and a razor blade. And I had it, And I said, oh yeah, I'm going to do that now. And I ran around the house looking for a suitcase. And we'd never gone anywhere. And I looked everywhere. We didn't own a suitcase. I remember being just panicked, thinking, oh no, they won't let me join the Army. I don't own a suitcase. So I called the recruiter and I said, I don't have a suitcase. What am I going to do? He said, use your pillowcase. So I went into my room and looked at my pillowcase. And my pillowcase was still a Scooby-Doo pillowcase. I went to my sister's room, strawberry shortcake. I went to Scooby-Doo. And I put in the socks, the underwear, the toothpaste, the toothbrush. And then it dawned on me, I don't shave yet, So I called the recruiter and I don't shave, do I need a razor blade? He's like, Private, you need to learn how to follow instructions, get a razor blade. So I went to 7-Eleven, bought one of those little big razors that I wouldn't eat for a couple months, threw it in my Scooby-Doo pillowcase. And the recruiter picked me up and off we went to the airport, and then I flew to Fort Benning, Georgia. And basic training was, was going along fine. And the first Sunday came along and they said, all right, I need 2 formations. Protestants in this formation, Catholics in this formation. And I'd never been to church a day in my life, so I was so confused, and then I thought, I have blonde hair and blue eyes. I bet I'm Protestants. So I got mine with the Protestants, and we marched off to church, and it was so boring. I thought, if I wanted to sit still for an hour, I'd stayed in high school. And so the next Sunday, when it came time for church, I had a plan. And I had a vision of me sitting every Sunday alone in the barracks with my feet up on my bunk. And so the drill sergeant said, line up for formation for church. And I said, this is America, and I'm an atheist. You can't make me go to church. That's right, Private Jones. I can't. But I have been looking for a volunteer for pots and pans duties every Sunday from now until graduation. Thank you for volunteering. So every Sunday I had pots and pans detailed. But what I discovered was that there was a freezer right behind my station. And the drill sergeants would hoard cases of ice cream bars in this freezer. And so I got this idea of putting ice in buckets, putting ice cream bars in the buckets, and then sneaking it upstairs. And then when the soldiers came back from church, I would say, who's going to shine my shoes on Monday? Ice cream bar. Tuesday, ice cream bar. Wednesday, ice cream bar. Who's polishing my brass? Ice cream bar. Making my bunk? Ice cream bar. So one day of extra duty, I didn't have to polish my brass, my shoes, or make my bunk all week. Now the bishop is giving me a dirty look because he thinks that that's stealing. But Bishop Yanta, there are a lot of veterans in here, and I didn't steal that ice cream. I secured it. It was left unsecured. The military knows, the veterans know. And I was an atheist anyways. What did it really matter? It didn't matter. And so basic training went along without too many hiccups, although, and I was in the infantry, so basic and advanced training were together. My girlfriend did send me lots of letters, like 3 or 4 would come in a day, and with every letter that she got, you had to do extra push-ups. And so I wrote Katie, thanks for all the letters, but can you put them in just one envelope? And no more like sparkly sprinkles on the outside. And now my son was in basic training last year, and I would just send him letters, you know, letter after letter that just said, more push-ups, son, love, dad. But basic training went along fine. I was getting ready to graduate 2 weeks before graduation, and we had really finished our training, and now it was processing inoculations for our special duty stations, all that sort of work. It was a Sunday, I was cleaning pots and pans, waiting for my chance to secure ice cream, when a young man, I'll never forget, he was a traveling Irish kid from Pennsylvania. And he was on desk duty, and he came running in, and he said, Jones, you need to come out here and answer the phone. Your girlfriend called and she's crying. So I ran out and I answered the phone, and Katie was crying like I have never heard a woman cry in my life before or since. And the only way that I can explain it to you is that her soul was crying. And she kept saying over and over and over again, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, it wasn't me. Her father said over the other line, Jason, you know your secret, and your secret's gone. I took Katie to get an abortion. As soon as you said the word abortion, a drill sergeant hung up the phone over my shoulder, because I wasn't supposed to be on the phone, and I hit him. Another sergeant grabbed me by my collar and dragged me into my captain's office. And I was just crying, yelling, call the police, he killed my baby. My captain looked at me confused, and he said, "You're private, explain to me calmly what happened." As I explained to him, he looked at me and said, "Why would I call the police, Private? Don't you know abortion is illegal? And do you know, now it was the spring of 1988, 89, and I did not know abortion was legal. I was an E1 private making $300 a month. It wasn't above my pay grade, and I was last in my class, but it wasn't above my pay grade to know the most basics of human development. And it most definitely wasn't above my pay grade to know that you don't hurt babies. But I didn't know that it was illegal. And my captain must have been a Christian or pro-life because he was very sympathetic. And he gave me a roll of quarters. He gave me a Cliff Notes explanation of Roe versus Wade. And he said, you know, Private, go to the PX and call your girlfriend, comfort her. So I walked to the PX, and you know, I remember that walk like it was yesterday. I was horrified that I couldn't protect my child and my girlfriend. I was raised in a broken home. 5 siblings from 5 men. I'm the oldest, so by the time I was 17, there was a lot of chaos. When anything bad happened, I would just think, by the time I was 5 or 6, I would just think, when I'm a father, I'm going to create a peaceful, loving, joyful home for my children. And here I was, just right out the gate, I failed to protect my girlfriend and my child. And I remember just being horrified and confused that this was legal. And I got to the PX and I called Katie. We didn't talk. I just comforted her. I just listened to her cry through a roll of quarters. I would try to say something, but she would just cry. And after an hour and a half of an entire roll of quarters, the mechanical voice said, you have 60 seconds, please deposit more change. And I didn't have any more change, and Katie was just crying as hard. We ended that call as she was at the beginning. And I just wanted to comfort her. I thought, what can I say? What can I say? And I just blurted out, Katie, I promise you, if it takes me the rest of my life, I'm going to end abortion for my daughter Jessica. And the phone was dead. And we know that her baby was a girl because her prominent Catholic father was very close friends with Cardinal Bernardino. Beat her up and took her to Chicago Masonic Hospital to have a forced 3rd trimester abortion. And the abortionist after the procedure said, oh, by the way, you had a little girl. And so her name is Jessica. Now, I made that promise just to comfort her. I didn't know what I was saying. I can tell you I'm really bad at commitments. You know, I'm 220 pounds. For 2 years I've been trying to get to 200. You know, when I started, I was 215, so I'm not really going in the right direction. Really bad. You know, I'm a new Catholic, but 13 years new. That seems new. And, you know, still, holy days of obligation, I go, but it's a challenge. Like, that's football day. Didn't the church know that? I mean, a lot of these things. It's still hard. And Lent, give me a break. That's so challenging. And I remember it was like 6 years of being Catholic before someone said, oh, you can break the fast, just add a rosary or something. I said, you waited 6 years to tell me that? Okay, pour the coffee. But it's really hard. And that's how I know that over these 27 years that I've tried to keep this promise, the first thing I think about every morning when I wake up is protecting the child from the violence of abortion. When I lie in bed every night and I close my eyes and go to sleep, the last thing I think about is protecting women and children from the violence of abortion. I know that even though for my first 13 years in the pro-life movement I was an atheist, it was by God's grace. It pushed me. When I got to my duty station in Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, I thought, how am I going to end abortion? And I got this idea. I'm going to go door to door and tell people abortion's legal. Because I didn't think people knew. I didn't know. I don't know. Who else knows? People just don't know. And so I decided I would go door to door, and I got the idea because my mother is the type. Anyone who knocked on her door when I was growing up would get in. Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, vitamin salesmen, encyclopedia salesmen. No one ever made a sale. My mom didn't have money, and she was an atheist, okay? But she would take the whole day. But it taught me I could just knock on strangers' doors. So, on the first Saturday I went, I'll never forget the street, big blue circle, in Wahiawa, right outside of Schofield Barracks. And this was in 1989, and now these were migrant Filipinos from the Locos Norte who were working in the sugarcane fields. I didn't understand this at the time, but I just went and knocked on the door. And this was my pitch. I just knocked on the door and I said, excuse me, do you know abortion's legal? And, you know, usually the Filipino guys would say, Bombay Hali boy, go away. Hali means white. My kids are Hawaiian, Filipino, Chinese. I call them jalapenos. But they would tell me to go away, and I'd say, no, really, abortion's legal. And they didn't believe me. And I'd have to convince them. And they would all were pro-life. And I thought, this is going to be so easy. But, you know, I was knocking on the doors of the most pious Catholic Filipinos in the world. Could you imagine if I started in Boston? You know, I'd have quit day one. But I really was just so inspired at how easy this was going to be. And then my captain heard, he said, Private, now I don't really think I was a good boy. I was a very bad soldier. I had 3 Article 15s my first year. If you were in the military, Article 15s aren't good things. They're bad things. Usually you get kicked out of 1, out of the military, 1 in a career. I got 5 total by the time I got out. So I wasn't a model soldier. I was always in the mischief. I was an atheist. So my captain called me and he said, Private Jones, there's a rumor going on around about you, and I know it's not true. It's a little strange. But they say you harass civilians about abortion. I do that, sir. Yes, sir, I do that. Is that okay? Are you crazy, Private Jones? No, I'm an abortion. If I go door to door, he's like, that's your plan? Because at West Point, they taught me, you have a goal, you have a plan. You start with your goal. You say, how can I do that? How can I do that? To get to the point to do that? How can I do that to do that? And work your way all the way back, Jones. So you reach the worst soldier in my company, you. And then work it forward. Give yourself 40 years. He was probably making fun of me, but I was so inspired. Thank you, sir. I wrote a plan that was crazy. I'm going to produce movies that inspire people and change their point of view on abortion. Crazy plan. Now, you have to know, I was not only a high school dropout, I failed the GED test. You had to take the GED test to get in. I failed it in Illinois, and the recruiters were like, don't worry, we'll have you take it in Georgia. I have a GED from Georgia. And there I am, right in a 40-year plan. I'm going to make movies. Oh, yes, I am. Okay. And then this woman calls me. This was my real lucky break. This woman calls me. For those of you who know the pro-life movement intimately, you'll get this. This woman's angry. She said, you Jason Jones? Yes, ma'am. You need to stop telling people you work for us. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. I'm in the Army. She said, are you talking to people about abortion door to door? I said, yes, ma'am. We're Hawaii Right to Life. That's our job. And she was angry. But I was like, we have a group? wordsmiths. That is brilliant. The beat's better than my, like, do you know abortion's legal shtick? And so I went and met this lady, and then I was off to the races, volunteering. It was so exciting. I get out of the Army. I go to the University of Hawaii. We were saving so many babies at my club, the pro-life student union at the University of Hawaii that we started. I didn't want to graduate. That's why it took me 6 years. And I remember when I graduated, I thought, I'm never going to save another baby again. It was like kind of sorrowful. And by the way, all at this time I'm an atheist. So I get out of the Army, I run for chairman of the Young Republicans win, I become chief of staff for a representative, I get a radio show with Mayor Frank Fossey, the pro-life Democrat Italian mayor of Honolulu. I'm doing all these things. And then Hawaii Right to Life called me in. And they said, this is the worst mistake in our history. But no one else will take this job. Will you be our executive director? And I remember thinking, I'm going to end abortion this year. 40 years, I'm going to do it in 9. I can still lead the Bears to the Super Bowl. This is great. And so this was 99, and I introduced what we were all doing at the time, the third trimester, a ban of one procedure, the partial birth abortion procedure, in the third trimester, that very modest proposal. We put it into the legislature, and it gets held up in committee, but that doesn't slow me down. I go up to the state representative, Susie Chun Oakland. I say, Rep, if you don't hear this bill, I'm going to canvass your district. She says, have at it. So I have at it. We canvass your district. I get her mom, her dad, her husband, her children, her staff, and most of her districts to sign my petition. I bring the petition in. I'm like, Rep, you're going to hear my bill now, aren't you? She said, no, Jason, but that was good effort on you. You did a good job. That was my first major defeat. I remember just being broken. And so I called Dr. Alan Keyes, Ambassador Alan Keyes. Do you remember Ambassador Alan Keyes, real pro-life hero? And I called Ambassador Alan Keyes because he came, we brought him to speak in Hawaii, and I kept his number. Don't give me your number, I won't keep it, and I won't call you and ask for things. But I called Dr. Keyes, and I said, Dr. Keyes, I'm wasting my life. I'm chairman of the Young Republicans, I'm chief of staff and representative, I'm director of Hawaii Right to Life. I have a radio show, I do press conferences, I'm writing op-eds. Doing everything that I can possibly do under the sun in my little island state. And I can't get a bill out of committee that bans one procedure in the third trimester? What am I doing with my life? And Dr. Keyes said, Jason, the darker the world becomes, the further your light will shine. Just pray. I'm an atheist, you know? So, all right, thanks, Dr. Keyes. Oh yeah, I gotta go. And I was mad. That's the problem. These lazy Christians would just pray. That's not the problem. I gotta work. Tell me to pray. That's like telling a vegan to eat a hamburger to get rid of a headache. But I was so angry, I said a prayer. I sat at my desk, and this was my prayer. I said, okay, God, you exist. I don't believe you're real. If you're real, I'm not a fan, because I don't see you. Where are you? Children are abused. We have legal abortion. You know, all-knowing, all-loving God. Really? I said, I'm trying to end abortion. I'm not good. It's me and 3 old ladies in a little office. I'll see you. If you want me to acknowledge that you exist, and that appears to be a thing with you, I need 3 things from you. I want rich people, I want famous people, and I want powerful people to stand up against abortion. God, raise them up, and I'll acknowledge you exist. Okay, flash forward a couple years ago. We make a little film called Crescendo. Have any of you seen Crescendo? Of all my films, it's on YouTube. It's free for the world. Screen it, share it, view it. Winningest short film in Hollywood history. I made it with a woman named Patty Millette and my daughter's son. His name is Justin Bieber. And we made that film to be, I heard the cathedrals in Europe were built to last until our Lord returned. I said, I want to advance the dignity of the child until our Lord returns. So I'm going to make a work of art that hopefully lasts for the rest of human history, that transcends culture and time. We wrote on a whiteboard, you know, we want a film that's a true story about someone that resonates with people across cultures and across time. And then a young man from Monterey came in and he had an idea, and I said, okay, give it your best shot. He gave us a script that was better than I could have ever imagined. And now there I was, invited to screen the film at the United Nations General Assembly. We didn't ask for it. We were invited. I would have never thought to ask for it. And as the credits rolled and I saw that I produced it with the mother of the most famous young man in the world, it was funded in part by Patricio Slim from Mexico City, one of the richest men in the world. And there I was, communicating to ambassadors from around the world. I heard God whisper in my ear, "Okay, smart guy, what do you want now?" And that's when it dawned on me. Because I felt, truthfully, I felt as helpless then as I did as a boy in Hawaii. I said, okay, I want you to do it yourself, maybe, because this is hard. But I knew at that point that it was not God's will that was lacking, but it was mine. That God wills that every human person be protected from violence. The problem is that our wills don't conform with His. So that was liberating, and I knew what I had to do. So we marched on, we did other projects. In 2008, on election day, I was in Ohio running a little super PAC campaign. It was another one of those despair moments. My high school girlfriend called me and said, okay, Jason, today's a big day for you to keep the promise. I'm getting on a plane. When I land, I'm going to call you and tell me the results of the election. By the time she landed, the results were in, and they were not what I was hoping. And I really felt defeated. Thought maybe the Supreme Court was lost for a generation. And I got on my plane from my little hotel in Ohio, flew back to Los Angeles, and by grace, I had this book that a friend gave me called Memory and Identity in my attaché case. It was the last book written by an actor from Poland, Kirill Wojtyła. It was his last book. He wrote it as Pope John Paul II. And it was, in part, it's a beautiful little book, rich, short but rich and powerful. In part, it was, he looked back at his struggle against what he called the three great ideologies of evil in his age: communism, Nazism, and the culture of death. And he said that evil is a deprivation, and within evil are the seeds of its own destruction. No ideology of evil will persist. He said when the Nazis rolled into Poland, I knew they wouldn't be there long. But as an actor, I looked to resist by putting on plays that celebrated Polish and Catholic themes that were forbidden by the Nazis. And so as I was flying back to LA, I thought, how privileged am I? Here was a young Polish man, a young man, with his friends who risked their lives to put on clandestine plays. And I will tell you this, winning the culture war is a necessary condition for winning the legal battles. Not sufficient, but it is a necessary condition. And here's the good news. When you think about films that present the abortion issue, with the exception of two that were actually funded by Planned Parenthood, take those off the table. Obvious Child and Cider House Rules, take those off the table. Think of every other one. Who's seen Juno? Bella? Waitress? Who's seen Knocked Up? Oh, you should be ashamed of yourself. That is that's like TVMA or something. I had to watch it for research purposes. Let me tell you, this movie Knocked Up is the most anti-abortion movie you'll ever see. Over the top. Think of songs from artists like Nicki Minaj and Kid Rock to Kenny Rogers. They've all written songs about the devastating tragedy that the abortion was in their life. This show I don't recommend you watch. It's called South Park. Every year, South Park does an anti-Planned Parenthood episode. Every year. Over the top and aggressively anti-Planned Parenthood. We are winning the battle against abortion through the arts. As my plane went on, Pope John Paul II said when the Nazis left, communists were right behind them. And he said, I knew that they would be there longer. I knew it. I knew that it was only in the arms of Our Lady and our Lord Jesus Christ that Poland would survive. So the young actor became a priest. Became a priest. And you know, as someone who is an atheist in the pro-life movement, I hear this all the time and I get so frustrated. I hear Christians say, you know, we need to separate our faith from our pro-life work. I had a nun tell me that, you know. But here's the thing, I'm not an anti-abortion activist, I'm not a pro-life activist. I'm a truth about the human person activist. And the truth is this, that the human person is made in the image and likeness of God. It has an incomparable dignity, beauty, and worth. And there is no argument for our vision of the human person that can be severed from that truth. And here's the good news, it's not offensive. In Hollywood, I'll have people come up to me at parties because I am kind of outspoken, you know, and they'll know who I am, they know who I am. They come up to me and say, I know who you are. You hate me, don't you? I'm like, no, I think more of you than you think yourself. You know, you think you're the product of, you know, matter and motion and chance over time. I think you're made in the image and likeness of the all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful creator of the cosmos. I think there's nothing more beautiful than you in the created world. Do you believe me? Am I lying? No, I believe you. So who thinks more of you? You or me? You. No one has ever slapped me, called me fascist, and walked away. No one is offended when you tell them that they are the most beautiful thing in the created universe with an incomparable dignity. And that is what you do at Allied Women's Center. You witness to the truth. You witness to that truth. And I want to tell you something. I don't know what it is about Terry, but she literally is a walking reflection of the gospel of life. Am I not kidding? You look at her, and you see the gospel of life like just, I know now what St. Francis meant when he said, preach the gospel all the time, just use words when necessary, because when you walk across the room, I think people become pro-life just looking at you. It's amazing. And I want to echo Terry in this. When I finished the book, I thought of something. There is a big difference between me and Carol Latou. A big difference. You're like, yeah, there's a lot of differences, buddy. A lot of differences. But here's one. One, I was blessed to live, to be born in the United States of America. The freest country in the world. Father Richard Newhouse, the founder of First Things magazine, wrote when he was a young Lutheran civil rights leader. He wrote, the greatest tragedy in American political history is that the pro-life flag has been planted firmly in the Republican Party. I disagree with Father Newhouse. I think the greatest tragedy in American political history is that the pro-life flag is not being firmly planted in both of our major political parties. We have national political figures now telling us we've never been more divided. We've never loved each other more as a country. We've never agreed more. Don't believe it. Americans have a shared commitment. Americans have never had more respect for each other, for each other's children. We share the same goals. We all want everyone's child to have economic opportunity, to live in safe neighborhoods, to go to great schools. We radically disagree on how to achieve our shared goals. But that is different than having a different destination in mind. And that is because our goals are grounded, whether we know it or not, in the Declaration of Principle, which is that we are endowed by God with inalienable rights. But here's a fact. Our republic cannot survive another 40 years of Roe versus Wade, because Roe versus Wade brutally denies the founding principle of this country, just like slavery and just like segregation. And if we don't end abortion like we ended segregation and slavery, we will lose our republic. So this is what I promise you. I will never vote for any candidate at any level, R or D, that is not firmly committed to protecting women and their children from the violence of abortion. I want to conclude with a little story about our friend I think many of us have in common, Eduardo Verástegui. With my work, I get to go to a lot of wonderful places. Everywhere I go, I meet beautiful Christians. The past week, I've been around evangelicals a lot. I'm glad I can drink in public today. This is good. I have to drink alone in my room. But everywhere I go, I'm greeted. I live in Christendom. I really do. Because everywhere I go, I'm greeted by wonderful Christians. In a month, I'll be in Syria. In 2009, I was going to Darfur, Sudan, in the height of the Civil War. And Eduardo, being the saint that he really is, heard that I was going and he said, Frater, he called me, I want to go with you to Sudan. I think if I go, I can bring attention and help raise money for the wells and the medicine that you guys are working on. I'm like, yeah, you might die. He's like, imagine how much money you'll raise if I die. That's a really good point. Okay. So if you want to come, you got to be at this airport in Kenya on this day. Because I'm going to leave a couple weeks earlier, and da-da-da. You can't be the whole time. I want you the whole time. Come for a week. Limit the risk. Maximize the potential of producing some spots. And I didn't really believe he was going to be there. I just didn't believe it. Because I figured he'd set a Google alert, and the closer it got to the day, that, it's like, I don't want to go to that place. But he started telling everybody he was going to Sudan. I knew it because they were calling me, yelling at me. His manager and agent called me. How dare you invite Eduardo to Sudan? I'm like, I didn't invite him. He invited himself. And then women started calling me, how dare you bring Eduardo? And this one lady called me day after day. She said, you're a father. Your wife's pregnant. You have 4 children. You want to be a hero and die? That's your business. But how dare you bring Eduardo? It's true. I want you to know I told this lady, I said, listen, Mom, he really wants to go. It's true. So do you know he shows up? I didn't believe it. He takes this little plane in the middle of Darfur in a war zone. He bounds off the plane. And the next day we go to share the gospel with a group called the Janjaweed. Janjaweed I didn't know at the time, and devils on horseback. And they didn't like what we were telling them. And things went south really quick. And there was Eduardo giving miraculous medals to little Muslim children. This is our Navy, and he's where this every day. And my friend, who's the country director for Voice of the Martyrs, was there. He's evangelical Christian. And he came up and he said, Jason, you go pray like a Catholic, and I'm going to pray like a Protestant, because they just told me they're radioing for permission to kill us. So I went and prayed. I remember it was a Friday, because I took out my rosary and I went, first sorrowful, no scourging of the pillars today, Lord. First joyful mystery. There. And then as a Catholic, Bishop, you'll understand this, I got a little excited. I thought, I'm going to have my own prayer card. Every calling bookstores in the world. And I looked at Eduardo and I was like, no, it's going to be Eduardo and his companion. Now, Bishop, you might tell me who to write about this, but I don't think it's fair because you notice the main saints, as we would say in the movie business, is like this, and the companions are always like this. They look scared. They don't want to be there. I don't bring Eduardo to dangerous places anymore because if I get a prayer card, it's just me on the card, no Eduardo. Things worked out okay, and we were getting ready to go home a couple days later, and I was walking through the SPLA camp. The SPLA was the coalition of Muslim, Christian, and animist groups working together to push back the Islamist cartoon. And I was walking back from their camp to our camp, and a group of boys were following, and from the ages of about 10 to 2. And they were very serious. I see these boys every day, but this time they were very formal, and I knew something was going on. They marched, single file next to me as I walked, and finally one of the boys stopped, and he mustered up the courage. He said, "Mister, take us where you're going." I said, "Oh, I'm going to camp. You want to play soccer tonight?" He goes, "No, take us where you going." I said, "Going to camp." No mom, no dad. No mom, no dad. No mom, no dad. No mom, no dad. We are good boys, mister. Take us where you're going. Take us to America. And it broke my heart because I knew that I could not bring them home. So I put them under a tree and I said to the boys, I promise, there's nothing in the world I would want more than to bring you home. And my wife would be so happy if I came through with you guys. But my country will not let me. And it will not be fair to your country because you are their most precious treasure. So my wife and I are going to pray every day that God raises you up to be the founding fathers of a new, free, peaceful, prosperous South Sudan. And we prayed together. And we walked to camp and we played soccer. And I felt relieved in my sorrow for these boys. Because I knew that God could answer that prayer. And you know it too, yes? Now, I wasn't being cavalier. I knew that they were illiterate, that they were war orphans, that they had parasites, they didn't have access to drinking water, and they lived a few miles from a raging war. But I knew that God could raise them up. And you know He has? He has. Because since that prayer, South Sudan has become the youngest republic in the world, free from the yoke of radical Islam. And those boys go to a good school, way to the south. And now they're not boys, they're young men. They have nutrition, education, and they will be the founding fathers of the free South Sudan. And with my visits to places like Syria and Darfur, I can tell you, when I come home and I hear Christians say things like, if so-and-so wins, I quit. I give up. And I want to tell them, oh, you give up? Oh, I didn't even know you started, really. Or things that bad? And look, I'm not naive. Things are strange today. But we are still the freest, most prosperous Christians who have ever walked the face of the earth. That is the truth. So when I look to the promise I made as a 17-year-old boy to end abortion on my own, by my will, I know now that by my will I will not end abortion. But when I think of the folks in this room, I think of my prayers to those boys. This is what I think. That if nobody outside of this room in our nation cared about ending abortion, but those of us in this room, with our material prosperity, with their education, with their access to financial resources, our friends, if just those of us in this room truly conformed our life to God's will, we would see the culture of death vanish in an instant. St. Maximilian Kolbe in the starvation bunker in Auschwitz had more hope than many Christians I hear today. And his hope was justified. Because 3 years after his martyrdom, a 1,000-year Reich vanished after 12 years. So we begin to menace the world with its ICBMs, with the KGB, with nuclear submarines. We ducked under our desks and students to hide from, disappeared in an instant. I know that in our lifetime, Planned Parenthood, Mary Stopes, and all the instruments of the Church of God will disappear in an instant. I'm going to continue to plant the flag for life in my little parish, country parish on the west side of Oahu, in my office at the corner of Hollywood and Vine, and in my home. And I ask you to continue to do it. And there's no better way to do it than supporting Allies for the Center, because they truly help the most vulnerable members of your community at their most vulnerable moment in their life. Thank you very much. God bless you.
There you go. Jason Jones. Jason, you do realize that a lot of them come to San Antonio in a couple of weeks, right? For the assembly, if you haven't yet registered, please register for the assembly.
Now, the great thing about Jason is he is in the board of a Pearson Center in Hawaii. A true story. He is on the board of Pearson Center. Allied Women's Center is a Pearson Center. We are 100% Catholic. We follow the teachings of the Catholic Church, and we work hard at saving babies. So he really understands what Allied thought about. I love this guy.
Not only am I on the board, I've been the youngest member of the board for 20 years.
I was the youngest one at one time, not anymore.